Thanks for joining us. Are we live, Mike?
We're good.
Good. Welcome to the Hartford Board of School Directors meeting of November 13th, 2024. We are calling the meeting to order. There are some changes to the agenda. One is approval of the
Basically, I need approval from the board, a vote of the
Right.
board to be able to invest our bond.
And that was talked about a little bit at the meeting before. We just checked with the attorneys and, made sure that we did it the right way and protected those funds. So Jacob needed that authorization. So that's one thing. We're adding a brief presentation of school financing that came as a request, from, the list is amazing, but the product is well worth, viewing here, and we'll hopefully later get a motion to put it on our site in our information for budget under that tab. And others? Madam Superintendent, is there anything other than that? Others?
Hearing nothing, I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. So the first thing, we're going to ask your indulgence to, while we move into a brief executive session to discuss in a public officer's status. So we have two motions going.
Right, so this is V13A3. Okay. I'm not used to this new format yet. Move that we find that there is need for a executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, or evaluation of a public officer or employee, and that we go into said executive session pursuant to section 313A3, the VSA. If I got that right.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. We will be right back. Well, thank you so much. Coming out of executive session, there is no action that needs to be taken. So we will move into the rest of the agenda. We have visiting with us today a couple of our, or I should say, all of our elementary principals, which is really cool. And they have a presentation that they'd like to share with the community. So you have the floor.
You've got this podium, but where would you like us to stand?
Sort of right where
Is
you
this
are
okay?
works
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
because then we can see you, the thing can see you,
Like
and
Fenway Park over there?
nobody has
Yeah. Right, well, thank you for having us. I'm excited that we're starting to come and present to you again and share all the good work that's happening in our schools and, you know, be connected with you and the community. So, you know, I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to be here and to share things. And, you know, I know you will reach out through Katie, but if there's anything specific that you want to hear from us, you know, definitely let us know. Cool. So we're here, myself, Rick Dustin-Eichler, I'm the
I'm
principal.
gonna move just so I can see, because I can't actually
Yeah.
turn around.
Yeah, so principal at the Dothan Brook School, and I also think, I don't know if we'll say this, but all of us live in Hartford too, which is kind of cool. We actually all live in the catchment areas of our schools, so our neighbors are the kids there, which I think is just really neat. So, Rick from Dothan Brook.
I'm Amelia Donahue from the Adademy School.
And Doug Cussius from the White Papers.
Excellent. So we're here to talk about the Hartford Teaching Collaborative, which happened at the beginning of August. And it was in response to what we have seen over the last number of years with teacher turnover. And in particular, new teachers coming into our schools that are here who have great content expertise, but don't necessarily have teaching experience. And so there was a grant through the state that around math and literacy instruction that we applied for, had to be used by the end of September. It was ESSER funded. And we wrote that to use for an onboarding program. So just to give you some background, I had Alicia pull some retention rates for us. So at the top are the retention rates for staff over the last 4 years for teachers. So you're seeing, you know, over the last 4 years, every year we're having, 1 out of 5 teachers that we're gonna have to replace, 1 out of 4 teachers that we're having to bring on board. And, over at the elementary schools this year, we have 86 people on a teaching contract. So just for perspective there, teachers coming to us in the last 2 years, so new teachers in the last 2 years, that's 32. So of that 82, 32 are in their first 2 years of teaching. And over the last 2 years, 21 of those are completely new to the profession. So they'd never taught anywhere before. And then 12 of them were on provisionals, which means that they hadn't taught before, they didn't have a teaching, or they had taught before or not in their area of endorsement. So, for example, we have a teacher who's pre-K, kindergarten special educator. They taught pre-K before, but they'd never done the special ed side, so they were on provisional. So why is this important, right? We want, I think you can flip this up, great. So why is this important? As a school district, we have, and as elementary schools, we have curriculum that we want all our teachers to teach. They have to understand social emotional supports for our students. They have to understand basic structures within our schools and within our district processes. It's a lot. It's a lot. And in a basic regular year, we have 5 days to get them up and running. It's not much time, right? You imagine coming into a job as important as teaching and having 5 days when you have never done the job before. It's a lot. So 2 years ago, just to give you some background, 2 years ago, in the summer of 2023, we were able to allocate some money to at least give teachers some online training in the programs that we use. So Bridges Mathematics, EL, and our social emotional curriculum, Second Step. So they had some hours that they could use just to get up and running on the curriculum, which was great. It was great to have them come in. We were also able to make sure there's an instructional coach in all of our schools. So that's a person who's dedicated to help all teachers, but at the start of the year helps particularly our first year teachers. And that was fabulous. We got good feedback, and teachers were saying this isn't enough. Like, we still have a ton to learn. So in winter of 2024, we announced this ESSER grant for literacy and math, and we said, hey, this would be a great opportunity. Can we use this for onboarding? So we put it together. Really, Doug did a lot of the work. It was great. Put it together, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited some more. And finally, in June, we learned that we got this grant, which was, I got written down here, so I looked, $118,251, which was a shot in the dark. It was late, so what we were hoping was to make this, really put it out to our new staff and say, hey, if we hire you, you need to come to this. But unfortunately, because it was so late, a number of them couldn't all participate. So we didn't spend all that, but it was great. And then we ran it in August, so next slide. So we ended up having, of our new teachers this year, we had 10 of them participate in some capacity. So not all of them spent the 2 weeks with us. Some of them only could come for a day. Some of them could spend the whole week. And what was nice about the program is we had our own teachers, our own professional staff come in and be the instructors. So they're getting firsthand experienced teachers who know the curriculum, who know the community, talking about it. And then we'll get into this a little bit more, but during the second week, we brought in 42, we invited community children to come in, and we had 42 students come in so that the teachers could practice their craft.
Having technical difficulties here.
I hear that. So we set out some goals for the program along kind of 5 main paths. One of them is trajectories. Trajectories follow along what we would, our proficiency-based outcomes, right? It's similar to that. And it's the basic idea that in math and literacy, kids progress along a path that's reasonably predictable. It is not linear, learning is not linear, but reasonably, research has kind of proven that these are predictable. And it's really important for teachers to know that forwards and backwards. So like having that as one kind of factor in what we wanted to accomplish. The management and the climate that we wanted to establish, you can't teach if the kids aren't listening to you and if they're not available for learning. And they actually, more and more research is coming out about like one of the biggest factors in reading instruction is to make sure that you actually have the kids available to get the instruction first, right? You have to be grounded. And so working on management is number one for brand new teachers. Third was MTSS. We have a plan here, our layers of support at Hartford School District, and we wanted to start teachers right away thinking about that, knowing about that. This was geared primarily towards classroom teachers. They're, kind of the bread and butter of elementary instruction. And with that, we focused a lot on that layer one. So what is the universal design? What are the things that if you do this, most of the kids are going to be able to do? As Rick was talking about, when you're coming into a new program, a new school, a new district, even if you know some things, when you're handed a curriculum, and the curriculum is 8 books that take up this much shelf space for math, and then for ELA, it's actually more like 16 books that take up this much shelf space, and that's just, 2.5 to 3 hours of your day. It's a lot, and so some of the time was spent intentionally thinking about, like, how do you access this? What are you actually looking for? What are the cheats? How do you find your way through that just volume of words? And then finally, the teach, have the kids come in. This was a teacher-based priority, right? We were thinking about the teachers first, and then students second, which is weird, because we never think that way, but that was part of the goal, was to think, how are we going to retain teachers? How are we going to make them be as successful as possible? So yes, teaching the students was an important part of it, but for us it was also about getting that reflective process going. So it's not just teaching, like you're going to go in there with a plan, it's not going to work, almost never, and you have to adjust, reflect, and try again the next day. It's like teaching is just a series of experiments and failure, moving forward on that. So starting that coaching cycle became one of the important goals. And so we set up the format like this. The first week was around professional learning. We had skilled teachers from across the 3 elementary schools plan and deliver this instruction. So on the management side, we had a couple of teachers from Adademy came over and did a great presentation on responsive classroom, getting into morning meeting, and which is a little bit like circles, which echoes some of our district goals. We had our math teachers from our district math committees come in, and they were talking about high leverage concepts and the trajectories beyond math. And so this intentionality of like bringing our 3 schools together, we're one district, one elementary school program, was an intentional kind of design component. And so they had half a day of that, and then the lead teachers obviously needed time to plan, so we set that up. The second week was when we had the kids come in, and our new teachers were teaching kids. And it looked a lot like school, which is kind of weird, because if you come in the summer, you're expecting, oh, it's going to be like water balloons, and it was like, no, it was like school, and the kids did a great job. And then in the afternoon, starting that cycle, how did it go? What worked? What didn't work? What are we going to do different tomorrow? What might this mean for your instruction in September, right? It's kind of getting that piece. So that was kind of the design component. It had these 2 parts: learning and then practicing and reflecting. Sorry. So for staff, we wanted it to be meaningful and relevant. Yeah, like this wasn't something that we wanted to force people to do. This wasn't an indoctrination. This was like an invitation, yeah? And part of that means compensating them for their time. In theory, right, they could have spent their whole summer doing this. And nowadays, it's just, that's not how it works anymore. And so like, to get people in, we have to help make it partly valuable for them. We always are talking about building internal expertise. We have district-wide committee structure that we're starting for the same reason, that when we have this internal capacity, we're better, more efficient, and it's kind of spreads. So that was a part of the design component. This time for reflection, like I talked about, hoping that that kind of grows, right? So often new teachers may take advantage of coaching cycles, but a lot of times it's veteran teachers because they're already a part of this, right? They know it, and so it's kind of like, no, it's okay. It's okay to not know. It's okay to be part of this. It's okay to have a thought partner. Yeah, this connections across community. And by community, obviously I mean, the schools, but like the adult community, right? It was like you're working with people you might not see again until the January in service or something like that, but you're teaching the same content in the same district. And we wanted it to be a sustainable duration, so we talked a lot, and like this is one of the things we got hung up on in the planning process, was like, wait, how much time can you sit and listen to someone talk to you? And that was for the adults. And it's the same thing for the kids. Like, how much time is that actually feasible to get something back out of it? So that's why we did like half-day chunks. Like that's like, right, we're on summertime. That's like, if you want to actually get your bang for your buck out of your money, you can make them sit there longer, but it's not sticking. For students, right, these are like keys to any summer program for students. You need transportation. It's just not equitable to not have that. Meals was an important part to us. Thinking about school routines, we want it to look and feel like school, right? And then also part of that is heterogeneous grouping, which again is maybe not how you would think about a summer school, right? Traditional summer school program. You would think like, oh, if you're behind, that's where you go. Well, that would, again, that kind of disserve some of our purpose of like, if you're a teacher and you're getting ready for your classroom, you have kids that are way ready to go, you have kids who are way like just figuring it out together, right? And so like, it would be weird to be able to be like, oh, no, these are your nice, neat little package. They're all working on the same thing at the same time. It just doesn't exist in reality. So we wanted it to be real.
So this was really exciting and we learned a lot in the process. And I think one of our goals in coming to share with you all is to kind of be transparent about some of our thinking of where we'd like to take this program in the future. So along the way, we collected feedback from the participants after the first week and after the second week, and the various coaches and mentor teachers who were a part of it, to kind of, this was really a pilot program. Like, we got this grant to try something out, and just like we're asking teachers to try out a new practice, learn from it, and make adjustments, we wanted to just reflect that in our thinking. So these are kind of some of the things we learned. People really found that it was valuable to have the time with the online curriculum resource ahead of time, but then coupled with time to talk to teachers who are actually teaching that curriculum to say, well, like, how do you really plan this, and what templates do you use, and how do you have time for all that? And so that was a nice combination of having access to that menu that they could work through, and then real life people to guide them through it. And everyone found that there were skills that we, the things that we focused on in that first week of the responsive classroom, which is really like building classroom culture and routines that are going to help kids be available for learning. And then some nuts and bolts of how kids, those trajectories of how students develop mathematical sense and how they develop literacy skills, that those seem to feel like the right building blocks for people starting out. Another thing that people told us about was that being able to connect to a coach was really, really helpful. So I will say that the biggest thing that I think we're going to grapple with in the future is what role do the students have and in what part of the program. Because people got that real life practice of like, okay, I tried this, this is how the students responded, and now what am I going to do tomorrow? And we heard from them that doing that with students who they were going to know for 5 half days right before school started kind of felt like it was like a big investment of their both mental and emotional energy, right? Like being caring teachers who want to serve kids well, when they maybe wanted to focus more on sort of planning forward for their own students. And we had envisioned originally being able to kind of do all of that. And when we, in June, got the go-ahead for the program, just getting all those pieces in line for this year was tricky. So I think that's going to help us in our design next year of how to be strategic about that. And part of what people did really value doing with their coaches is that unpacking of curriculum and how do you really do this? Okay, I got this content in the morning from these expert teachers, and now like I'm halfway through actually sketching out and planning this lesson. Would it be valuable to go this way with it or that way, or use this structure or that structure? And then another huge thing that people, and I think it was part of our goal of the program, was feeling like, especially people who are coming in on these alternative pathways, a lot of them have amazing content area from whatever their previous career was. And even some people coming through traditional teacher prep programs or coming into our schools saying, we just didn't get that much around classroom management, social emotional learning, building class culture. So that felt like a pretty successful area. And connecting with just amplifying our teacher leaders one neat thing was that then these teachers had, we had paid their time to be able to plan and create this content. And then we were able to incorporate that into our in-service in different ways in our different schools. So it wasn't just the new teachers that got that. But I know at Adademy this year, we have 6 new certified staff out of our 20-something. So that's pretty significant. So even the people that couldn't come to this, everybody got to hear those foundations again. And, the basic things around routines, a morning meeting, how to make sure every student's feeling heard in the classroom, all those different pieces are important for all of us. And even if you've been at it for a really long time, going back and doing that with your colleagues was really valuable. So it kind of had this ripple effect outside of that week as well. And I think that's something I'm excited about, and we're all excited about moving forward, is how to keep kind of amplifying that teacher leadership, because we really do have excellent teachers in our schools and who have invested a lot in different areas of their own expertise, professional development that they've pursued, and so giving them spaces to share that more with their colleagues. And this is one kind of awesome additional way in the summer where there's like more freedom to go deeper. People really valued getting to actually see lessons modeled, so sometimes the coaches in the time with the students, a teacher might have been saying, oh, I want to try out this math activity, but I can't really picture what it looks like. And so having those coaches available to sort of show it in real life. And that's something the coaches do in coaching cycles as well, where they'll model something and then gradually over days or weeks, the teacher will kind of take that on and get feedback. And so people found that valuable. And then a lot of the presentations were also led kind of like, we call it teacher hat, student hat, where the teachers got to experience like a morning meeting as if they were students, and then kind of afterwards step outside of that and analyze, what was going on there, why did that work? And then one other thing that I think was an interesting thing is we were planning for giving teachers who are, brand new potentially, the opportunity to work with students, and we thought, oh, they're going to be in this preparatory week with other teachers, so maybe it would be valuable to pair them together with these brand new students in a brand new environment. And the feedback we got from them was like, oh, actually, that was a whole other layer. Co-teaching is a training that we, the previous summer, our instructional coach from OQS offered like a week-long course just on co-teaching. And so some of the feedback was like, that's a whole art unto itself. And if we are going to have students, it might be nice to actually not have that right at the get-go. So I think we learned a lot from what our teachers shared back from us, and we're really grateful that they were willing to jump in and try it out and be real about what was working and what could be better. So in terms of next summer, we would love to be able to continue a robust onboarding program for elementary teachers. I think we have the interest in collaborating with all of our partners in Hartford to open that up beyond elementary. And that some of the important components do seem like treating this as professional time by being able to pay people for that time.
That's the hook.
Yeah, come back next week. Sure. Thanks. And so we're kind of toying around and want to get more input, and as the year unfolds with maybe offering this in sort of specialty areas, because one special thing was that actually as teachers were sitting and planning through lessons, everybody is learning. It's not like the people who have taught are the teachers and the new people are the learners. There's very much an exchange of ideas happening. So thinking about how to foster that more by maybe having some content-specific weeks around, one is on math and this one is on science of reading. So you might attend something kind of in learner mode, and then you might be part of something else in more of a facilitator mode, and like letting people offer their expertise to each other. And then we've kind of heard about other programs where that do incorporate students, because I think that's another thing we're trying to solve for, is how do we get our learners back into school in the summer? And we've been trying to crack that nut for a while. And how do we do it without kind of creating a bunch of extra stress for these brand new teachers a week or two before school starts? So one model that we might look at is having the more veteran teachers or the folks leading those strands be the teachers modeling, and then the newer teachers are getting to observe that and debrief it afterward, and that move that you made, why did that work? The students responded like this, then you changed your plan, what was that about? And kind of unpack in a real life setting. So we're hopeful that we can continue some version of this program going forward.
Questions we could answer for you? Peter?
I've got several. So, first of all, congratulations on having the gumption and go out and try to get the grant and get the money. Was this presentation a look at what we're doing, or was it in some way and we'd like money to continue this going forward? Because the grant was evidently a one-time thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think in honesty, it's a little bit of both, right? You know, we're pretty happy about what we did, and, you know, the timing was less than ideal, and it was awesome to pull all those people together. And from a student perspective, I think it was a really great week. You know, when teachers, you know, got to build relationships ahead of time. So there was lots of positives that we definitely want to share with you. Our workforce shortage isn't going away, right? So, you know, I think for retaining staff, for bringing staff on who have, you know, don't have experience and helping them hit the ground running, these things are important.
That leads me
important for student success. I mean, it's an investment. This year, we ended up, I shared how much we got, we ended up spending just under $40,000 for the program. That included transportation for kids. So we all know how much expensive transportation is. So there's definitely ways that we can reduce costs. But, you know, we want to keep the conversation going about how we make this happen in whatever capacity is financially feasible.
Right, so that leads me to my second question, which is the traditional notorious indicator of how difficult it is to be a teacher is the very high rates of people who want to be a teacher, who train for their entire lives to be a teacher, thinking mostly the young teachers, not the ones who are changing careers, and then get there and find that they just can't handle the classroom and do not make it to a second or third year. As you said, it's extraordinarily expensive to hire a teacher. If you can prove, it's too early to do it now, but if you can prove that you have a higher retention rate as a result of this introduction to the district and the schools, I think you could make a very strong and easy argument this is paying for itself. So that would be, in my thought, worth following up on. And thirdly, did anybody else notice in the second or third slide that the young girl has got the chair firmly on top of her foot?
Yeah, it's a good technique so they don't run away.
I think to your second point, obviously we'll see how those folks do this year, but so far, you know, we're a trimester in basically, and some of the things that I've noticed are, it seems like the new folks at OQS have really built stronger relationships sooner with other colleagues, which I think is a hugely predictive factor of whether they will stay and make it through those initial challenges. So like some examples are, they didn't even participate in the whole program, but we have new fifth grade teachers and a special educator who's moved up from a different grade. And they were able to connect this summer and get that work going of who are the students on my caseload, what are they going to need in the classroom. And I think that has just like, they've accelerated and gotten so much momentum into the year. And I can think of other teachers too who they have connections not just with their own little team, but with the other teachers who presented and who are there coaching and who are also new. And so I think just that relational factor, which is incredibly important for people being able to reach out, get the help that they need, just have the support through, oh man, this whole day wound and now what, which is a huge part of starting out teaching.
Yeah, and it really wasn't that bad either when I did.
Right.
When I started,
Yeah.
yes, conversations can help.
So I have a question. Was the 2 weeks enough time? Like, I know it's more than the 5 days that most teachers get, but would it be even better to have more time, or was 2 weeks the sweet spot in the summer?
It's a great question. I mean, again, when we were planning this, like, everything was on the table. Julie Robinson was, curriculum director at the time. We were spitballing the possibility of like having ongoing sessions throughout the year. Is there different components to be doing that? And we just couldn't pull that off. And I don't know how to validate whether or not, like, there's almost like, the answer is almost like there's never enough time, it feels like, you know? But yeah, I don't know.
I think the match between the online piece, because that could be done asynchronously, so you could work at your own pace if you're traveling or not living locally. A few teachers weren't living locally at the time. You know, they could do that piece and then come in with that background knowledge. So I think some people shared that it was too much time just because it's summer and they want the flexibility. So, you know, we weren't rigid around you have to come the whole program. We got said, you know, here's the days, when do you want to come? And so people pieced it together, which was why we saved a good bit of money.
Yeah, and I also think it helped us attract good lead teachers. Like, okay, I can give you a day, but I'm not giving you an entire week, you know?
And I think if we set it up ahead of time, you know, we're able to plan it and have at least the date set in early April. So when we go into hiring season, we can say, hey, here's the expectation. Please make this a priority to be there. It will, we'll get more folks there.
And I think that the idea of like having different, possibly having different strands would mean that there's maybe more date flexibility and people could opt into more, or kind of say, the week I most need is this, and that's what I'm gonna come to.
So being that we've got a pretty robust mentoring and coaching, you know, program, are we simultaneously integrating this programming into that so that it feeds straight through the year? You know, I understood there were pieces of it, you know, because there was collaboration with some of the you know, team teachers, you know, that were helping facilitate.
Yeah, so the coaches were with them all during the second week.
Cool.
So they were laying the foundations for some early coaching cycles there and building those trusting relationships with the teachers. So they came to school at the end of August, you know, they already knew who to go to. They already had some level of comfort with those people.
And a lot of the people that led the sessions are mentor teachers, and so they might not have necessarily interacted with their mentee, but I think they got, on both sides, kind of a sense of these are mentor people within the building that I can go to, and like these are new folks and some things that they're thinking about and ways that I can look out for them.
You know, because that's powerful, so as far as the relationship building, you know, especially when you're fresh, you know, in a new, you know, district, let's say. Even if you've had that experience, you know, just getting your sea legs, I suppose, so that's great.
Yeah, I mean, a strong onboarding program is critical for every business as far as I'm concerned, especially for employee retention. Do you foresee this, you know, if it yields good numbers in terms of retention, do you foresee it being maybe mandatory for new teachers they're joining schools?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, I think it's hard for us to say, you know, that's something that we'd have to talk with the union about in the contract. There are districts that do require it for new teachers, you know, it's part of their signing that they participate in the program. So I'm sure there's positives and drawbacks to both sides, so we want to really look at that. It's needed. It's needed.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I would say it's also really appealing throughout the hiring process if we're able to say to applicants, not only do we offer, you know, a mentoring program and instructional coaches in all of our buildings, but we have this academy for you to really meaningfully onboard in advance. So that's another aspect of this that's really promising, is that it can be used as a tool in our hiring process.
It's a powerful tool, another asset. For sure. Well, thank you guys so much. And, you know, just keep up the great work, because we're still hearing good stuff. And it's always good to hear good things.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice to see you. Stop by this week. Thursday's a great day.
Thursday. I'll start looking for my outfit.
No, that's the thing, that's
Maybe I'll
you.
come on Friday.
So that was really powerful. You know, when I think about, you know, what attracts, you know, people to Hartford, you know, as far as new staff, and what does help our retention, it's activities like this around, you know, professional development and every piece of it. And we've taken a very strong approach to that, you know, for the last 15, 16 years, and it just keeps growing. And the more we grow it, the better it will be, you know, so. It's just a piece of the puzzle.
Is there opportunity for questions from the public? It's not public comment yet, but
What's the question? Because, you know, we're running okay, tell us, what do you think?
continue. Go ahead, I'll wait.
But remember, during public comment, ask a question. Thanks. We're gonna move into the budget discussion. And this is the first draft, but in keeping with that academy presentation, you know, knowledge, you know, is power. There was a really nice piece done by Vermont Public for all of Vermont as a whole, schools, school boards, and it's a 7-minute presentation. And I've been doing this for a minute, as my daughter would say. And it's probably one of the best presentations I've seen, you know, as far as very clearly stating how it works here in Vermont. So if you indulge us, we will, it's 7 minutes and 35 seconds, so it's a good investment, if you would.
And I sit over there to watch it.
They seem to be missing the sound.
You have to use your spirit computer speaker.
Try it.
James.
Perhaps unmuting. or is that gonna be the?
Are you able to play it through the meeting owl by chance?
I don't know if the audio is gonna go to Zoom. Try unmuting.
First, local school boards create a budget for their district, and on town meeting day, residents either vote to approve or reject this budget. Once a voter-approved spending plan is in place, the school board sends the state a bill for basically the full amount. Now, the state must pay for all of these budgets, plus a few related expenses. And so in total this year, Vermont will spend $2.3 billion on education. But Vermont doesn't just use property taxes to pay for schools. We also have sales taxes, the lottery, and other sources feeding into the statewide education fund. In Montpelier, state lawmakers check how well these sources are doing, and then figure out how much they'll need to raise from property taxes to make up the difference. There are two types of school taxes: homestead property taxes, which are applied to primary residences, and non-homestead property taxes, which are applied to basically all other types of property, including commercial buildings, rental properties, and second homes. Now, the non-homestead rate is fairly simple. Technically, the legislature sets one statewide non-homestead rate. But to ensure fairness, we use a common level of appraisal, or CLA, to adjust the tax rate in each town. So each town's taxes reflect current and fair market values. Every town appraises its properties a little differently and on different timelines. So this helps make sure that towns with outdated appraisals aren't inadvertently getting their residents an unfair discount. So the tax department takes that one homestead rate that the legislature sets and then uses the CLA to adjust the rate from town to town. Homestead taxes, unfortunately, are trickier. Each school district gets a rate depending on their spending per student. Districts with lower spending per pupil have proportionally lower tax rates. Each district's homestead rate, which is pegged to that spending per pupil, is then adjusted again using each town's CLA. That is why homestead rates look different from town to town, even when those towns are in the same school district. The difference between tax rates before and after the CLA is applied can be jarring, so updates which will be in effect in 2025 aim to bake in some of this adjustment earlier in the process so that people are less surprised when final rates come out. Now, we should note that this per pupil calculation that I mentioned earlier isn't straightforward. Some kids should cost more to educate, like students in rural settings or those living in poverty. So they're weighted differently when the state is figuring out how much a district is spending per pupil. Act 127, that new law you may have been hearing about, adjusted these weights. Plus, Vermont income sensitizes property taxes, meaning if your household earns below a certain amount, you get a tax credit. And roughly 2/3 of Vermonters receive such a credit. So how does this usually all come together in Montpelier? Well, unless lawmakers want to change the basic structure of the system, they typically have really two choices to make. First, they have to decide how much of the burden to put on the homestead tax versus non-homestead. And then, if they're lucky and the education fund has a surplus, they have to decide what to do with that extra cash. A surplus, however, can be a double-edged sword. One-time money is best spent on one-time expenses, but it's pretty tempting politically to use a surplus to take the pressure off property taxes. The problem with that, of course, is that education spending is an ongoing expense. And so when a surplus or any other type of one-time money is used to artificially buy down rates in 1 year, that means tax rates will have to play catch-up the following year. You risk a spike. Yes, it's super complicated. So why do we have a system that is so mind-numbingly complex? Why can't we make it simpler? Well, that's because fundamentally it's designed to be fair while preserving local control. 30 years ago, we had a very different system. While the state did provide some funding, school budgets were generally a local affair. School boards and local voters decided how much they wanted to spend, and then they set tax rates based on their local grand list to raise that money. There was one big problem with that system. Property-rich towns could spend lavishly on their schools, even with low tax rates, while property-poor towns struggled to pay for the basics, even with high tax rates. It wasn't fair. There was a lawsuit about it, and in 1997, the Vermont Supreme Court decided that the status quo was unconstitutional. In response, the legislature passed Act 60, and that is why we rely on a statewide education fund and not local grand lists to pay for schools. The basic notion of the law is this: whether you live in Bennington or Barrie, if your school is spending the same per pupil, your tax rate will be the same. Our education system is often hailed as one of the most progressive in the country, but it's not without its problems. One, it's incredibly complex, which means that it's difficult for voters to understand the implications of their vote when they're asked to weigh in on school budgets. Two, it's not cheap, and in an era of declining enrollment, some want to see more cost containment, although others argue that tax reform is the answer. And three, while it uses a lot of incentives to try and encourage the highest need districts to spend more and more privileged districts to spend a little less, local voters and school boards still get the final say on spending. And sometimes more privileged communities still choose to spend more, while poorer communities still choose to spend less. So the challenge before us is this: can we make the system more affordable? Can we make things more fair? Can we make things more legible to people on the ground? And can we do all of this while preserving local control? This is something we will be following closely. For Vermont Public, I'm Cartoon Lola Dufour.
Well, thanks for indulging us. I think that will help people have a little better understanding around how school finance in Vermont works. There is a series of other resources that we'll make available, and what Jacob has been talking about is having a separate strand, on the webpage that is around the budget, so that if someone wanted to, I wonder what my calculation is. Well, the tax calculator that anyone can use would be available on the website, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. You just plug in your own personal family numbers, and you can tell what you can expect for the upcoming tax year. So we'll have those kinds of resources available on the page under Jacob's lead. So,
Kevin,
yes.
when will the legislature address the issue of borrowing money? A year ago?
Well, we're in the we will do that because it happens each session. So it doesn't happen until after we've done the budget, of course, because it's a citizen legislature.
So we won't know until the last moment as to whether we have to make it up or whether they actually get it from, I don't know where, but somewhere, and put it back.
Well, see, that's that piece that happens every year because of the system, the way it's designed right now, is we build our budget, we submit our budget, And basically, that's the bill to the state. And on the other end, the state has to go, okay, we've got 98% of the funds available to do this. Where are we gonna find that other 2%, including making up the difference, you know, that we borrowed from last year, so that at least there's a reserve in the fund. And all of those calculations are happening from January 1 until the second week in May. And, you know, that's the process. Jacob, you have the floor.
Okay, the first, I guess, round of the budget is always kind of the 60,000 foot view. It's basically just kind of the summary of the stuff that we know currently. So like the negotiated agreements that we have, the cost of health, and then we have the kind of known expenses that we've added to the budget that we can plan on. So the administrators contract, a little over 62,000 increase. Teachers, grew 536,000. And then the step increase is 319,000. Support staff agreements, 129,000. And then the health insurance increase, a little over 642,000. So currently, we're looking at about 1.7 for salary and benefits. And then kind of the other knowns that we have so far, we will be adding the little over $1 million for the first year of our new HSD facility bond. And then we also have year 2 of the interest on that. Then we have a little over 16,000 for the Butler bus increase on that contract. There's still a few contracts that are up in the air, and we're working on negotiating those. But as of right now, we're at about 3.5 million increase for FY26 so far.
Questions?
Large and scary number, clearly, but this always happens at this point in the process where we talk about what's going to increase, and then we do the analysis of what's not going to increase or possibly go down. And then we do the, what do you think we should be doing? Instructions from the superintendent's office. And we get more of a number, so it's too early to panic now, I think is the answer.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, by December, if the numbers start to come in from the state, we'll have a better idea about where we should start to shape financially. But certainly, you know, I think, at least from our conversations, the discussion has not been around like, hey, give me your wish list, you know, what do you want to add? You know, it's like, we're just trying to keep really what we have, and if the numbers come back better, we can have that discussion, but I don't want to give anyone, you know, false hope. We should be careful until we get a better handle on what those numbers are.
And as you've seen, the administration, which basically includes the Agency of Education, you know, as well, is, you know, trying to do a flat, you know, 3% across the board. And that was in part of the governor's letter, you know, that he shared, you know, with Vermonters, you know, about his thought about where we all should be as far as school boards across the state. And again, that's yet to be determined, you know, process too, because it's always that battle, you know, after the first of the year.
I would just like to add my 2 cents.
Yes.
Jacob's gonna be bringing that information at our next meeting. And I just wanna look out here and let the world know that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 citizens that are sitting here that are interested. Now, a few months ago, we had people all over us because they thought we had misappropriated some money. Well, I'm challenging you, come sit in this room and help us put this budget together. Instead of waiting to doomsday and then start throwing knives because you don't like the end result. I don't know how, there is no easy way to say it. It's your schools, it's in essence your budget. We're just trying to do the work to make sure you know what's happening and where these dollars, why they're required. And if you don't come, don't talk, I don't know how to get it to you.
You know, and that's part of the reason why we felt that it's very important, you know, in as many ways possible, to get as much information out as possible, you know, to the taxpayers of the town, you know, and you know, having that specific, because, you know, I look at it, you know, from when I put my teacher hat on and go, when you look out across the classroom, you've got a whole spectrum. You've got some students that are like geeky about the subject, and then you've got some students that are like, and those are the two ends, and then everything in the middle. So it's really hard, you know, as a board, knowing that, how do we get that information across to that diverse a population, you know, and all, you know, I can say on behalf of our board is that we will try to do the best we can to try to increase, and I'm not gonna call it transparency, the information flow, so that if you're kind of geeky and you like the numbers, you can jump right into that spreadsheet, you know, because it'll be available. But if you just want to kind of see the picture, you can also go to that page and go, oh, so that's the, okay, I got it. So that's the mission, especially this year, you know, for folks. You know, we're all students, we're all learning. You know, we've got another, you know, that's what Nancy's doing actually tonight, you know, the group that she's working with on our behalf with the Vermont School Boards Association, they're starting their primers. So, you know, it's a continuous information flow, and we just have to try to share as much information as possible with folks so that they can grab what they need in order to make their decisions. So, anyways, if that makes sense and helps. Any other questions, comments from Edmund? Cool. So the next piece is discussion around the superintendent search. There's a copy of a proposed calendar that the consultants, you know, put together. And looking at, you know, based on some of the discussions we've had, trying to finish our part of the process collectively in March, so that the pool of applicants, you know, is clear, you know, starting, you know, in the work in December and really in earnest in January, as you'll see. And during December, you know, Carrie, you know, who will be our point of contact for the district, will be working with the consultants, you know, to put together the search committee. And when we originally spoke, you know, with the consultants, they wanted to use a format that they've used in other districts, which is the search committee put their input into the process after the board did a review of the candidates. And we felt, you know, in some of the discussions we had, that it was more valuable if it was reversed, that the committee brought a slate of candidates to the board with the with the combined process of the questions. The stakeholder groups have already been queried, and there will be another set of questionnaires going out around, you know, the qualifications and the expectations, you know, of the next superintendent. And then they will assist in developing the questions. And we're gonna use our format, which will be that the search committee will do the initial vetting. And so there is, the calendar would stay the same, but if you look at the version that's in front of you, we'd be flipping, you know, that part of the process where it says, you know, send board possible candidates to interview, and then the week of February, you know, 20th, you know, review the applicants, you know, by the board. Well, that would be flipped, and the search committee would be doing that, and then we would be doing, you know, our piece after. You know, and then what we've traditionally done, you know, in our administrative, you know, like searches and process, is once those 2 finalists or 3 finalists, you know, are determined, you know, they come to the district, you know, prior to a final interview and meet the community, you know, so, you know, visit, you know, the schools, actually get a tour, you know, of the community, and, you know, we can determine, you know, like who would help, you know, with that. I know the town, when we did that piece with them, I'm not sure if it was, I forget who was the emissary, you know, for the town, you know, bringing them around, you know, talking about, you know, the different community aspects, you know, of,
The different villages and so forth?
yeah, that and, you know, just the nuances of the Upper Valley, because it is pretty different. It's not like other parts of the state. So it's kind of nice to have someone, you know, like do that, you know, with them. And then usually, you know, it's someone who's had some history, you know, like in town, you know, to do that. But anyways, that's, you know, the piece. And then there is a note as to the makeup of the committee. And it's not as big as the committee we used on the last hiring, you know, because there's probably another, Sherry was on that committee. She represented the teachers because she was the president of the union at that time. And then as I looked at some of the names of folks that were on the committee, you know, back then, we had a really good cross-section, you know, of not only the school community, but the community as well. So part of the work that the point of contact would be doing with the consultants is, helping, advertise for the community members, and then, assisting, the schools with vetting, a couple of parents, the 3 teachers, a student, the administrators from the administrative team, probably, a central office staff member, someone from our special ed group, because, we have such a robust, special ed program, in the district, and then a staff member at large. So that, would give us a good cross-section of America to help pull things together. But if we're going to need a motion so that we can at least set the dates, the actual functions of some of the pieces, within those, would still have flexibility, depending on how the committee comes together and, working through it. But determining if we'd like to have the superintendent, the new superintendent named, by March, this is what we'd have to do to make it happen, basically.
Somebody else wish?
No, thoughts, as we're.
How agile is the timeline? If we were to, put it in place now, how much wiggle room does it offer if we need it?
Well, we control it, so, but in order to get it posted, on the website, in order for McPherson to be able to post it nationally, because their website is national, we need at least a structure, a proposed, agreed upon timelines from us.
So this is, in many ways, a slightly fancier version of what we have been doing historically to hire senior administrators, principals, et cetera, the curriculum developers, and so forth. So this is a process that has worked fairly well and seems to produce the results we're hoping for. So there doesn't seem to be anything particularly novel about this, at least with regards to our district and how we tend to hire our leadership. So there is always a balance to be made between including representatives of the various stakeholder groups and having a committee that is small and flexible and facile enough to move without getting in its own way. We need to balance the size of the committee against the need for representation. I personally have always liked smaller rather than larger, just because it tends to be easier. But I also understand the importance of reaching consensus, getting input, and so forth. And I think that this is a reasonable size and composition for the search committee. So I'm willing to be supportive of this as our approach. Assuming that I'm the one who's coming forward with the motion, I would like to leave as much of the dates out of the motion other than the date on which we will start to advertise and the date in which we will hope to have hired a superintendent, because as Garrett indicated, a certain amount of flexibility in terms of exactly when we bring people in for interviews, exactly how we engage with the community is probably to our benefit. So I would like to move that the board create a superintendent search committee to be composed of the following members: 2 members of the community at large, 2 parents, 3 teachers, 1 student representative, 2 administrators, that is principals or vice principals, 1 individual who works in the central office, 1 special educator, and 1 representative of the staff. And that this group meet as appropriate in order to start advertising for the position as set out in the proposal from McPherson and Jacobson LLC, those dates being Monday, January 6th to Wednesday, January 5th. February 5th. And that the intention be to interview, identify suitable candidates, to present those candidates to the board so that the board can make the final determination as the superintendent and have the superintendent in place by the week of March 18th. I think I've covered all of the essentials.
Second. So we have a motion and a second to move forward with the superintendent search calendar and process. Any further discussion? If hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Nancy has not joined us?
No, she's not online.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
One absent.
Now, what's not clear to me is, for anybody in our community that wants to apply for this committee,
No,
where do they go?
no, we're gonna, now that we've done this,
Now you come
we can.
up with it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we needed to do this piece first, because we've had a lot of interest already in the process. And actually Jacob and Katie have been, talking with Carrie, who was our point of contact, and they'll be working on, getting that communication to the internal folks, do we send a request through Valley News and our other outlets to community members? Do we go to the PTOs and the schools for parents, all of that, but now that we've done this, we can. So, does that make sense?
The final item that we need to take care of in the governance process is basically a vote to delegate authority to the school treasurer to invest the bond. We don't want the money just sitting there, we want it to earn some interest as to minimize the impact on taxpayers.
Do we have any specific language you would like with respect to where the investments can be taken, the kinds of investment that we would expect to be utilized, or
I've been,
just the discretion of the school treasurer?
well, I've been working
Business
with
manager.
the US Bank on, because there's parameters obviously around what we can invest in.
Yes,
So I've been working with them, and certainly, they've come back with 2 proposals, so I'll be in touch with you all to just make sure that everyone's comfortable with what we're actually investing in and can invest in.
So primarily, you know, this is to authorize and to continue the work, you know, that has already started the research on. Because, you know, Vermont's been pretty solid, you know, financially, and, you know, there's a lot of, you know, support with our bond bank and the state treasurer as far as supporting, you know, these efforts for districts.
so I would like to move that we authorize the district's business manager, Jacob Zena, to invest the money raised through the recent bond as he deems appropriate and consistent with state and federal law and our policies.
Just to clarify, it's the school treasurer.
The school treasurer, I'm sorry. The school treasurer, I thought you were doing it, some of the treasurer, okay. Sorry, then amend that to read the school treasurer, what the moment is, I'm blanking.
Joe Major.
Joe Major, okay. Thank you. So authorize Joe Major, school treasurer, we never really interact with much, to make those investments, or they have. Is that clear enough, or do I need to go back?
So I think
Okay.
that satisfied the auditors?
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
So we have a motion and a second for approving the investment process, you know, of the standing proceeds of the bond. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. So that brings us to public comment. And Monsieur.
I was wondering about hearing the principals.
Sorry, just for,
Zach Scott, Hartford. Wondering about the principal's presentation, if some funding streams could be having AOE funded as a CEU accrediting body. I assume the district has some allotment for teacher CEUs. I mean, I'm sure it's small, but that would be able to be reinvested in that way. And probably get more buy-in from veteran teachers if they could get their CEUs by teaching other teachers. Also, I know it makes it a little bit challenging with teaching to specific curriculums, which I'll be on the record of saying I'm not a huge fan of canned curriculums, but that's where we've moved to. Are we able to collaborate with other area institutions, one, to share financial burdens, but also I get worried about stagnation of thinking when we do too much in-house training in anything that we do. And so it's nice to have leaders getting out there, but it's really important for other teachers to get out and see how other teachers in other districts are developing curriculum, developing lesson plans, engaging students. I get worried about classroom management being set apart from instruction. Certain people are not happy that I bring up my own experience in education, but way back when, I know I'm a dinosaur now. My kids remind me regularly. Classroom management was part of building good curriculum, was part of being a good teacher and how you delivered that curriculum. And I have observed some concerns that I have that it's kind of set aside as its own entity when my observation from years of being in classrooms, my experience of leading those classrooms is that when you engage the students, behavior concerns are relatively small. Again, I know that was a while ago and some things have changed, but people are people, and when they're engaged, they're less likely to act out. Anybody else have anything? Because I can keep going.
I have a different question, but you do you.
What's the percentage of that projected increase, Jacob?
Um,
I don't have the budget in front of me, so.
On the ed spending, we're about 12% on the ed spending. And on the per pupil, we were just over 16,000.
And how did you, like what, I assume you used a median salary input for a new superintendent. How did you calculate that cost? I mean, if we hire a superintendent who's never been a superintendent, I hope we're not paying them as a 30-year vet.
It's something that we're gonna be looking at more because we have, the Vermont Superintendents Association does a nice little like survey to see, you know, what people are paying, and of course you have the years of experience. So that's something we're gonna look at more closely, certainly with there being, you know, a few more superintendent openings.
Are we talking a difference of 100,000 in that range? I mean, what's the?
I think you're potentially talking roughly 25,000. If you're gonna get like a veteran superintendent that's been doing this for years versus, you know, somebody who's kind of just starting out.
And one of the things that, not just for the budget piece, but as you know, if you go back to the script for the superintendent search, you know, we're gonna have to have that salary discussion for the range. You know, so that number will need to be available for the consultants and the search committee. You know, so all of that will be being developed, you know, utilizing the tools that, you know, Jacob's referring to between now and the end of December. Because I think that was the timeline to get those advertisements out for January. And we need them for the budget, so.
Yes.
Erica Fallon of Hartford. Do we, or when will we have a working calendar for next school year? Is that?
I mean, that's in process now. I just attended a regional superintendent's meeting, and that's already been something we've been discussing.
Okay, so my follow-up question to that is, are we still discussing as a district the built-in half days per month requested by the teachers union? Is that something that like is still being put out as an option for next year? Do we have any data that the teachers feel like the half days have helped implement and deliver high quality instruction to their students? Because I sat here last year and I listened to a lot of educators and administrators, or not administrators, educators say that the half days weren't being used as they intended. I can just tell you, this year as a parent, it's been really difficult. We haven't had a full day of school, a full week of school in like a month and a half. And so I'm just wondering, moving forward, if there was data supporting continued half days or support for the staff. If the teachers union is still really on board and they're like, we need these built-in half days, totally for it. Or, you know, it's really making students' achievement outcomes better. Like, is it still benefiting the teachers? And do we have data that it's benefited the students and families as we move forward with making the calendar?
And that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Okay, and, you know, it's one that we've had, you know, like every year, you know, as far as, you know, looking at, you know, how do we get that time, you know, for our educators to do some of that introspective work, you know, around how are our kids doing related to the tools that we have.
Sure, I'm all for it as a parent of multiple kids in the district. I just want to see that it's being used appropriately, or it's effective, or could we look at, like, maybe we don't do one in November and December because there's so many built-in breaks. And I see dysregulation with kids and times, and I see services not intending to get dropped off, but, you know, pay for a band instrument and lose an instructional day every month because there's no band. Things like that start to add up, and I'm just curious if we have more information moving forward for the calendar.
Oh, that's a great question.
Good evening, this is Heidi Duta from White River Junction, Vermont.
Hi,
I have a couple things to address tonight, and I don't mean any disrespect, but for a couple months now, I've been asking for the enrollment per school for since 2020. And one time I was told by the board in an email to go to the town report. I followed up at the meeting, and I was also told to go to the town report. And after the last meeting, I reached out to Katie Sutton, and because there was discussion of enrollment within each of the schools in our district, and I was told that I would be getting numbers. I don't want to be told to go to the town report anymore because that is only a chart. There are no number figures along with the chart. Going into budget season, tax resident paying members should have that information at their disposal. I don't believe it's going to be difficult if you guys have the figures to share that with paying tax residents. Furthermore, I've also been asking why the meetings are not put out earlier. The meetings are not being put out on listserv earlier and making it easier for people to attend, because just a little while ago, I've had my hand up for at least 25 minutes now since Mr. Heaviside made a comment that it's very questioning why there's only 5 members in your meeting right now. That's because people don't have the knowledge or the capability to even log into your meetings because you're not being transparent and you're not trying to work with the public. And another reason why people are not going to meetings is because we are not being heard and we are not being listened to in a fashion where you are being paid to provide for our students and our district and being paid yourselves by us, and we have no respect. So in order to deserve respect, respect needs to be given. That's how I was raised, and I am not trying to be disrespectful, but thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Heidi. During the budget process, the drafts of the budget do include after the October count, because the population numbers for each school are set October 1st. And that is the fixed number that the state requires every school district in every school in the state to have. And they expect you to build your budget based on those numbers. We will be using those in the next ideations of the budget. And we will have those available for you and everybody else, because that's just part of the process. So, you know, we hope that that's helpful, you know, as you look, you know, at it. As far as the historical data, that's why we put it in the report, so that you can look, you know, back and have that look back, you know, over time and go, oh wow, Milton Brook had that many kids, you know, then, you know, or X school had that many students then. So anyways, that's part of it. Anybody else with a hand up? But we'll continue to try to get that information out as
Heidi, did you have an additional question?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, if I can.
yes.
I appreciate you willing to work with me and get me the figures, along with everyone else that's interested in those figures. But we don't want just a chart, we want actual numbers. If you go back to the town report, you are seeing a pie chart. You are not seeing actual number count.
Heidi, can I just ask a question? So I just pulled up.
Please do.
So I just pulled up the town report, or where are you looking on the town report? So just, for example, I'm on page 16, and this is for the middle school, and this is the, I think the 2023 report. And there are 300, student population was 300. So it's not a chart, there are numbers, but are you saying you want, I guess I don't know what format you want the data in, but they do have actual numbers, it's just
Heidi,
on that particular.
there's a
school
student
page.
population page in towards the back in like the finance section that I do that has, you know, the breakout by grade and by school. And that should give you a better, just on the information.
Okay. I obviously did not see this and no one's explained this to me. So I appreciate both of your input.
This
Is that the one?
This is it right here. It's got Hartford School District
what
population. That is page 45.
It's
Page 45, and this is the page 45 of the 2023 report.
You
It
can see
has
what
that-
the document looks like and then find it in the, recognize it in other reports.
Okay. So
and
I
that's
have to
number-
go,
It's numbers.
so would I have to go to every single year to get the actual numbers?
No, that has a look back, right? As well, on that chart, did that one have?
Let's see.
Because there's one that has the look back.
This, keep an eye on. It's got, no,
Pull it
this
up on your screen, Jay.
doesn't have it.
This is just for the year.
That
of the
year,
report.
yeah, okay.
So I'll have to go see Lisa O'Neill down at the town clerk's office to see every year. Okay.
No, it's online.
No.
Jacob's pulling up the town report,
And Heidi, if you go to community resources
page 45.
on the district site, that's where all the annual reports are. I don't know if that's where you've gone for the reports or not, but they're all there. And
I'm pulling it up right now. Where am I
Yeah.
going?
so if you're on the district site, it's hsdvt.com/community. And then you'll see on the right side, all the annual reports. There's 2016 to 2023 on the right-hand side.
Let me see. You said right side,
Oh, sorry, left.
left. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And that's what it looks like. I don't know if you can see that or not.
I'm
It
gonna be
says-
I'm gonna be honest with you, Peter. The
Yeah.
owl at the select board meeting and the school board meeting are so blurry that you people even look blurry.
Probably improves my looks.
So this is the, student population breakout by grade and by school that we include every year. And it's always in, this page particularly that I do every year is always in the finance section towards the end of the report.
I am
It also-
scrolling there.
Yeah, it also shows where the students who come from other towns are coming from, and what grades and things they're in and so forth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does the Hartford Technology Center have a half-day option? Is that how you get a half student?
So we don't technically classify them as they're technically half-time, yes.
Is that how, I mean, is that what the count is trying to represent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what had happened a long time ago, I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but they were double counting students. Yeah. So, same kids that were going to, the high school and tech center, they were double counting, which basically, from what I've been told, caused a massive financial skirmish, so we say, and that had to be cleaned up, so.
It's not manipulative unless you get caught.
Well, people didn't know how to track it, it was like, a tech center kid was a tech center kid, but part of the rest of the bigger problem is the money following the student. So, that being said, finance technical education, if the school district says, well, I don't want to send my kids to the tech center, even if it's a valuable resource to that particular student. So that was part of the, the dynamic.
No other hands are in the air.
Well, thanks for the questions, because we'll keep building on that. So that brings us to our consent agenda, appointments and resignations and retirements.
We have one resignation, Lauren Epson Clark, DBS special education teacher.
And we have the minutes from 10/23.
And one correction.
Yes.
There's a correction.
Okay, I'm listening.
Second page, I believe, if I can find it. On the second page, about a third of the way down, it says Merrill added that's based on the state focus of having new builds where there's infrastructure in place. Instead of the word builds, I would prefer the word growth. That's what I was trying to say. So they designated growth areas. And those areas are where there is existing infrastructure, which in one sense makes sense, on the other sense it concentrates all the growth in a very small area. It makes it much harder to come up with the capital to give yourself a house, because if you need to do a 14-story apartment building, that's a lot more capital than what you need to put in a septic plant and get in a small house to start with. anyway.
Any other corrections or additions to the minute?
I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda with our thanks to the individual presiding.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, as amended. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
And I see we're having the next meeting in December and is continuing our tradition, not having one right the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, which is kind of traumatic, especially for the turkey. But anyways.
Okay.
And the meeting evaluation? Sure.
Board was prepared for the meeting, satisfactory. Board's time was spent on ends, not means, satisfactory. Each board member was given opportunity to participate, satisfactory. Board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness, satisfactory. Board adhered to Robert's Rules of Order, satisfactory. Board adhered to its adopted governance style, satisfactory.
I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
May I bring up before we adjourn? I would just personally like to thank the 5 of you and the 3 people, I believe, who've been here at the meeting, Sue Cyber. Anyways, I just appreciate the fact that you take the time to come here consistently. It means we're trying to be transparent, and we can't be if you don't participate one way or the other. So that's from me and the board, plus the administrative staff.
Well, thank you. And we will see you at the next meeting.
Did you say there was a meeting before Thanksgiving, or no?
No.
We missed it,
No.
yeah, that's, okay, so, yeah, we.
So with our normal schedule of 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month,
Yeah.
we always fall out with that November 2nd meeting, the day before Thanksgiving. And we always, or not every time, it's been once or twice we haven't, but almost every time we decide not to meet it just because it gets too complicated with everybody else's life.
So December 11th?
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor of adjourning? And thank you again for your attendance. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes.